Good afternoon and welcome to the Return Homestead. My name is Mike and my wife Marty and I homestead 6 acres in northeastern Kentucky. Today we've got a whole truckload full of stuff. We've got some lumber, we've got some pieces parts that are already cut, we got some basic tools, and what we're going to do is turn these into what every homesteader needs: shelving. So one of the areas that we had to hit right away, Marty's been talking a lot about it. We just made a video about it, as our laundry room. And we've still got some work to do in there. That's really what we're doing today, is putting together the shelves that go in the laundry room. But shelving is sort of a ubiquitous thing. It's necessary in every homestead, but probably in every household too. It's rare that you're going to find enough shelving or storage space. So I didn't use any set of plans. I don't like working from plans. I guess I just prefer starting from the raw and figuring this stuff out. You know, what is a basic shelf? What should it be? How is it best constructed? And so I've gone out and already pieced together one of these. So we have several of the parts already ready. I'm going to show you what these are all about and how they're made, how you can best cut them out of the material that you've got. So we've talked about this before. We're out here working on the patio again this morning. This is really the only place I have to build right now until we get this shop finished. And a good portion of what we need to do in the shop is build shelving. There's a lot of things that need storing. And right now, all there is just a table that somebody put up around the wall. And it's a sufficient enough place to throw stuff, but it doesn't really provide good storage. So this same basic shelving idea would work as well in a shop or in a garage as it would in a laundry room, which is where we're using it today. Shelf for above the door. And here are the 2 shelves. And I realize that not everybody's like me. Not everybody's going to want to grab a stack of lumber and just start building something without any kind of idea or plan going in. So if you see something you like and you'd like to be able to do this for yourself, maybe on your homestead, or just as a part of learning how to take care of your own basic needs, you want to learn how to build basic shelving, just send us a comment. Drop us a line. I'll see if I can scratch up some idea of how these plans actually work, give you a cut list, so that following what I do in this video, you'd be able to build exactly the same shelf. All right, so what is a shelf? A shelf is simply block of wood sticks out from the wall. It gives you some place to put things, store them, keep them. The problem is there's not a good way to screw a block of wood off to the wall. So we got to actually build a shelf, something that's going to hold itself to the wall and also support the weight of anything that you put on it. One of the first things that we have to do is make it possible to put the shelf on the wall, and probably the easiest way to do that is to put an apron that actually gets screwed off to the wall underneath the back edge of the shelf. Well, this is going to give us that place to anchor off to the wall, but it doesn't support the weight of the shelf or the items that you might place on it. If I were to just put nails down in through the top of this board and into the apron below it, eventually those nails are just going to pull out. So there has to be some support under the front lip of this shelf, or it's never going to stay up. So to support the front edge of the shelf coming off of our apron, we do need something that extends out and allows us to provide that support out here at the far edge. Now you can go on to any of the big box stores or go into any hardware store and you can buy 10-inch shelving brackets. That's what we're building with here, is 1x10. So this is going to be a 9 1/4 inch wide shelf. Don't let them fool you. They'll say 10 inches. It's 9 1/4 inches. But they'll sell you that shelf bracket there for a decent one that actually has good support. You're looking at about $11. I paid less than that for the entire board. And all we're doing is cutting out these tiny little triangle shaped pieces. And I'll explain the measurements on this and how to cut these out so that you get the maximum number out of a board as we go along here. So that's the basic idea, is that support then allows us to put the shelf on, and it gives us support out here at the front edge. The only other concern about shelving is the fact that it could span a large area. We're building 6-foot long shelves here, but you could be building 8 or 10-foot long shelves just as easily. And if you have an unsupported edge, meaning that this edge is not supported in between the ends, if you stretch over 6 or 8 feet, this is going to start to sag a little bit in the middle. The more weight you put on it, the more sag you're going to get, and over time this shelf will end up looking like a big U. And I'm sure you've seen some of those. If you've ever seen any of that pressboard furniture, eventually the bookshelves get that kind of cup shape in the middle. And the easiest way to support that front edge to keep it from bending is to simply put another piece of wood underneath that has a different alignment of the grain structure. So the grain structure on the vertical alignment of this board is much sturdier than it is on the horizontal plane. And so by adding this, we're giving it the strength it needs not to bend or warp in the middle. So the way this ends up going together is we have our lip on the front, we've got our apron on the back, and then we have our diagonal support. And all of that coming together is what actually builds a shelf. So then the only question becomes is how big a lip do you put on the front edge of the shelf? And actually the lumber tells you exactly how big. Your apron is exactly the same width as the shelf material, so it's 9 1/4 inches. That means that your angle bracket is going to be 9 1/4 inches tall. The angle that's on this cannot be more than 45 degrees. You can have less than 45 degrees, but you don't want more. If you keep it at 45 degrees or less, you're going to have compression, meaning that the weight of the shelf is going to be pressing everything into the wall, and the wall is going to press back on the shelf and hold that weight up. If you go over that 45 degrees, everything's going to be in tension and you're going to be actually pulling your shelf away from the wall. Now, I know this is confusing, but watch and you'll see how all of this comes together. I'm trying to give you some idea how you might alter these measurements if you were using, say, a 12-inch wide board instead of a 10-inch wide board. So this needs to fit in between the apron and the front lip. And pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. He's going to try to explain this to you, and it's going to get real complicated. This is not that complicated. The boards are 3/4 of an inch thick. You've got an apron in the back and the lip in the front. 2 times 3/4 is 1.5 inches. So we need to shave off 1.5 inches of the width of these brackets. So to begin making the brackets, the first thing I did was to rip 1.5 inches off of that board. Well, that also supplied me with the size of the lip that I needed, which was 1.5 inches. So everything matches up nice and even on the front edge. We've got some place to nail the lip off to the brackets. And that's how we decided how deep that lip needed to be. Now, it also turns out that not only do we want to get the vertical grain structure on the lip, but it's also a good idea to keep the vertical grain structure in these angled brackets. So I want to make sure that I'm cutting these in the right direction on the material so that the grain structure is running perpendicular to the direction of the grain in the shelf. Let me show you what I mean. Now, y'all, I'm trying to explain this without a lot of complicated math. I'm not trying to get you back into geometry class to figure this stuff out. If any of this is confusing, seriously, just drop me a comment. Tell me you'd like some serious plans, and I'll see if I can't get a set drawn up and sent out to you. In the end, all that matters is if you're using a 10-inch wide board, you're going to end up building exactly this block. And to build this block, the first thing you'll need to do is rip 1.5 inches off of the edge of this 9 1/4 inch wide board. Once you rip that 1.5 inches off, all you're going to need to do is mark that angle using a template. So using this exact block of wood. After you cut one of these, all you have to do to replicate is to flip it over, match the angle, draw and cut your line. So the idea is that this piece can be replicated over and over again. So not only can we cut one of these, but we can then flip it over, mark the edge, and this is going to mark the edge of the next cut, which is just going to be a straight cut. Hush, hush. That's enough. Once we make that cut, we can use the same board once again to now mark our diagonal angle, and then we can cut that. Once we have that diagonal, we flip the board over and mark and make the next cut. So we make maximum use of all the board footage that you purchase, and instead of $11 a bracket, you're paying just pennies a bracket for these things. So if you have a table saw, it's really easy to make this rip because you're just going to rip all the way down. You're pulling off 1.5 inches, and that's going to be the front lip of the shelves. I'm just going to go ahead and do this with a circular saw. Like the other builds that we've done, I'm trying to use the most basic tools for you. So there's the 1.5 inches we need for the front lip. And then this is where we get our brackets from. And to do this for the first time, it's not as complicated as it might seem. We're just going to come and find 1.5 inches right on the edge of the board. And then we're going to use the 45-degree angle on the speed square. Put your pencil on your mark and move your square up to it. And then you can mark your edge. So with that edge marked, we can cut along this edge, and that's going to give us our very first one of these brackets. Once you have this one bracket, you want to use this to replicate all the rest of them. There's no reason to do this any harder than that. All you need to do is flip it twice. You're going to flip it this way and then flip it this way. You're going to line the point up, line it up right along the edge that you just cut, and that's going to allow you to mark the back edge of the board for your next cut. Now we have not just one, so now we have not just one, but 2 of those brackets. And then we just continue on using that original bracket. Remember to always use the same bracket for your measurements, and just keep walking it down the board until you get the board cut up into as many of these brackets as you need. Now I am putting 4 brackets on each shelf, 1 on either end and then 2 in the middle, so that we've got about a 2-foot spread since I'm building a 6-foot shelf. So I'm just checking these 2 boards. I'm going to use these to assemble into a single shelf. And they're identical boards. One's the apron, one's the shelf itself. And I'm trying to make sure that whatever I use for the shelf is as flat as it can possibly be. The apron can be a little bit wonky. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat, which that one's not. But the flatter your shelf is, the better. Ideally, you want to make sure it's not cupped in the middle. I just put one of these together the other day where it was cupped in the middle. Very difficult to get a clamp on this to get it to sit down correctly, and you'll see why here in just a minute. All right, but we're going to start with this as the shelf. Now I'm also looking at the edges here. You don't always get perfect lumber, and you do the best you can if you're going and picking this stuff out, but occasionally you're going to end up with lumber that ends up with splinters or pieces that are going to crack off of the edges. So you want to make sure that this gets hidden. It disappears in your construction. So I'm making sure to put the splintered edge towards the bottom side because the apron's going to cover it up, and toward the back again so that the apron covers this up. So I'm going to put the lip right on the front. And I'm just going to use a couple of clamps to hold this together while I drive in a few brads. I am using 1.5 inch brads. I didn't want 1.5 inches. I wanted 1.25 inches. But our favorite big box store did not have 1.25 inches. In fact, they didn't have half of what they reported in their app as having. So we have 1.5 inches. It's a little bit longer brad than I would like to use. And the reason is that the brads have a tendency sometimes, because they're so small, to bend and warp as they go into the wood, which can cause some really serious blowouts where the nail just pops out of the side of the wood. This is going to be the front edge of the shelf, so we want to do everything we can to keep this clean and try to make sure we don't get any nails blowing out of this side. So I want to be able to get my nail gun in here, so I want to pull it out away from the edge of the table a little bit. And just so that doesn't become cumbersome, I'm going to need some clamps just to hold this thing in place. The clamps act like an extra set of hands for you. And unless you want to spend a lot of time sanding all of these marks off that they put on the wood, just think about where that's going to go. We'll put that to the inside of the shelf. Nobody will ever see it. They won't even know it's there. All right, so that's how that's going to set on there. We've got 2 more clamps to hold it in place, and then we'll nail it off. So all we need to do is get a little bit of glue on the wood. I'm not going super heavy with the glue. Marty's going to stain these once we got them all assembled. The last thing I want her having to do is to spend a lot of time trying to sand off a lot of excess glue that got squirted out of the seam. So I'm just going to use my finger to spread this out. Try to get a nice even coat. We also don't need a ton of glue. Mostly what holds this together is the weight of the shelf. The glue just keeps the boards from sliding against one another, and the weight of the shelf itself holds it in place and holds it together. And my grandfather taught me always when you're gluing things up that you want 2 glue covered surfaces. So we're going to put a little bead of glue on the front edge of this board too. We're putting the 2 glued surfaces together. I'm just going to clamp those off. And then I always like to check my seam and make sure I've wiped up any glue that's squeezed out. The more of this we clean off now, the less has to be sanded off later. And keep in mind that these brads are not here to hold the shelf together. The brads are only there to hold the boards in place while the glue dries. It's the glue that's going to hold everything together for you. And one final cleanup of this front edge as we pull the clamps off. This is going to save my wife a ton of time when she's out here trying to get these things stained up. The glue will not take stains, so you don't want to have exposed glue, especially on the front edge of the shelf. Now, without all the proper clamps and a large table to work on, it can sometimes get difficult to keep everything square. If I were to try to set that apron on here and nail it in place right now, it's just going to be all over the place. There's no way I'm going to be able to keep it square. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put these end brackets in first. And once I've got a bracket on either end of the shelf, it should be really easy to get that apron to sit into place. So that's how the bracket is installed. Now, it's really a design consideration. You can put this flush with the very end of the shelf, or you can move the bracket in some from the end of the shelf. Either way is fine. It's really a question of what you like aesthetically. I'm going to go ahead and put it all the way to the edge just because that's how we built the other one that's already up in the laundry room. So this is where things can get a little bit dicey if you've got a shelf that has a cup in the board. Because when you go to clamp this off, it will no longer sit flush against the shelf. And because of the 45-degree angle we have cut here, it's really hard to get a decent clamp onto this in the middle to try to flatten that board out. I'm going to need a clamp on the end there though. And I'm trying to be careful to align my nail gun. Typically when the nails come out of the gun, they'll have a tendency to move off to the left or to the right when they bend. And that's when you can get blowouts. So if you're holding your gun in line with your line of nails, you have a really good chance of blowing out the side of the piece of wood. If you'll turn your gun so that it goes this way, the nails tend to go left or right, and so you don't end up with as many blowouts in that direction. And you may be looking at this corner and noticing from the shadows here that this is not all perfectly flush. Again, this is not furniture that we're building. It is a shelf. The weight of the shelf holds it together, and Marty's going to come back and sand this. So she'll smooth this out a little bit. The dimensions aren't perfect. This board is just a little bit too long, and so she's going to have to sand that off to make it look nice when it's done. Now we have a bracket on either end. It's going to make it a lot easier to square up the apron on the back side. Just checking the alignment of this apron. This is how it's going to go on. We're going to get some glue on it, clamp it off. There are some small corrections I'm going to need to make as I put this together, but all of this is still a little bit wet glue-wise. Plus the wood is a little bit flexible, so I'll be able to pull this in as I put the nails in, and then that'll hold it in place while the glue dries. And once again, Marty was reminding me about the stamp on the wood. Make sure that's facing the wall, not facing out. Unless you like that look and you want it to be showing out. And if you can, get lots of these clamps so that when you're working on a 6-foot piece like this, you can clamp it along multiple areas. I've only got 2, so we're going to have to make that work. I'll show you how we can make that happen. Just want to make sure that's nice and square first. Yep. And leave myself enough room to get my nail gun in there. And then all I want to do is move maybe halfway back on the shelf. Or near it. And we're going to get our second clamp in here. Now with that held tight, I'm going to go ahead and nail off this section, and then I'll be able to move the clamps down. And you can see here where we're a little bit off angle, but this is one of those places where just a little bit of pressure, we can pull that into alignment. And then watching where that nail goes so we don't hit a finger. Go ahead and nail it off. Now that we're past the midway point nailing this off, I can grab this clamp and move it down to the other end. And this is all still very nice and flush, but we're going to clamp it off. And then I'll be able to nail this section off, and then we can slide this out and get some nails in there too. Just cleaning up the glue as we go. Paying a special attention here because this is the visible back portion of the shelf. So this is the apron and where it'll sit on the wall, and that's the bottom of the shelf. So you'll be able to see this. I know Marty will want to get a good clean stain all the way into that corner. And that can be really hard to sand that glue out of there. So then with the apron attached now, I can measure this distance. We're 68.5 inches in between the brackets. So this is 68.5 inches from bracket to bracket. So we're going to be putting the next brackets at approximately 22.5 inches. Looks like everything's going to fit. So all we have to do now is just do a quick glue up on these, throw a few nails in, and we're pretty much done. So that's essentially how we build or assemble the shelf. Once we've got everything cut out, we go through and glue it, remembering the glue is holding everything together, not the nails. The brads are just there to let the glue dry. Because we built that with a 45-degree angled bracket, we're going to have good support. Everything's going to be in compression, so the weight of the shelf is what's actually going to be holding it together, even more so than the glue. We've got a nice lip on the front. We've got an apron on the back that we can easily secure to the wall. So this shelf is good to go. That is until it comes time to decorate it. Now, if I was just putting this up in my shop, it would be ready. We just hang it on the wall. I know Marty, she's going to spend a good bit of time sanding this down. She'll also put some stain on it to make sure it's well protected and blends well with the other themed items that she has going on in the laundry room. So once she gets through with that, this is what it's actually going to look like. So that's the finished shelf hanging up on the wall. It really did make a big difference in that laundry room. Looking forward to getting the rest of these shelves finished up and hung up in there so we can see the final finished product. We do appreciate you joining us on the Return Homestead today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, would you do us a favor and just go ahead and do that? While you've got the window open, hit that thumbs up icon. That's going to let the algorithm know you enjoyed this video and they'll share it out with more people. But mostly you could help us out if you'd share this video out on your social media. Surely you know somebody who could use a little extra storage space and is not afraid to get their hands dirty with a little bit of lumber. Share this out with them so that they understand clearly that there is a pathway forward for them to return to the land, return to labor, and return to life. We'll see you next time.